And we're back. Shorter video. I didn't have the patience to do a longer one. We do actually see Krampus in this video. They're running the Christmas thing a little long.
Because they need the opportunity to milk as much out of this before it falls into oblivion.
Adder's fork and blind worm's sting.
And fun fact, most of those, like, you'll hear those and they sound a lot more exotic than they are. A lot of those are like, Eye of Newt, I think, is like mustard seed.
You have the look of one who has
But, you know,
and cannot go back.
witchcraft is often based
I
on,
know how you feel.
or perceptions of witchcraft are based on perceptions of herbalists.
Romany men, they punch and wrestle like they are still bear tamers. They rattle their silver charms and lucky symbols, and they polish their saints' finger bones. But they have no trust for those who make magic. They think naked witches dancing on the mountaintop. So Milos,
Which reminds me of the excellent movie
suits me fine.
Witch, spelled with two
I like it
V's.
better away from the camp. I can cover their
I don't think
behinds
you've
with
seen
no
that because you said you can't
distractions.
stand you can't stand gore,
Yeah.
so it has some gore in it. You probably haven't seen it.
With my magic,
But
I
it's
make
actually
no
an
rules
excellent
so
period
thousands
piece
surprise me.
set during the Puritan era with all period, like dialogue, period speech, period perceptions of witchcraft.
No naked dances.
So like what they have the witch doing is what people in the period thought of witches as.
God, I've been reading about the witch craze actually, and it's what I've been reading is that it was one of, like, maybe not history's first conspiracy theory, but it was the first big conspiracy theory to hit, and it hit immediately as like I remember all of time ago, in our very first episode, we talked about how conspiracy theories probably don't predate mass media, and the books, like, you've probably heard of the Malleus Maleficarum, Hammer of Witches.
Yes,
and
the Hammer of Witches.
that reads like, I mean, people don't read it today unless they're historians because it's so medieval in its way, but it's structured a lot like a lot of the conspiracy theory screeds, like the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, or anything anybody writes about Lizardmen, where they write out all of these ways that you can detect all of these terrifying beings who are after you and with a devious agenda. And, like, had I known this would come up, I would have memorized these names and dates. But, like, right as the printing press was really getting going in Europe, there was a guy who was really convinced about witchcraft. That witchcraft was a big thing that everyone should care about. And, like, before this point, witchcraft was a thing in medieval Europe, but it was often not really, it was treated as something, it wasn't always connected with the devil. It was always considered, like, bad, but it wasn't necessarily, it was something that people would be tried and convicted of in secular courts. This guy put together the theory that witches were all not only connected to Satan, but connected to each other. And he made use of the printing press to spread the idea across Europe, and sparked a massive rise in witch hunts. Like, there was a craze before, like, he started spreading this, but this had been going on for decades, but it had been more sporadic before this, and he started spreading this stuff in, like, the late 1400s or 1500s, and that's when the shit hit its peak. And you had witch trials all across Europe, stretching all the way out from Russia to Spain. We have plenty. There's still a witchcraft act on the books in England. They don't use it anymore, but they.
Well, do you know when the most recent use of the Witchcraft Act
I think it was recently, wasn't it?
It was like 1944.
Yeah. I think that
because it was the easiest way to get a fortune teller who had predicted the landing out of who had predicted the D-Day landing out of the spotlight.
Yeah.
Was the Witchcraft Act.
But that's
Because technically they couldn't charge her with anything
because
else.
she didn't do anything wrong, but it was a security risk. So off she went. I don't think anything long term happened to her. They just sort of
No, they just
imprisoned
needed her
her.
out of the public. They just needed her out of the public eye.
Yeah, they just I think they locked her up in relatively controlled circumstances for a few weeks and then let her out once it wasn't a thing anymore. And I don't know. It's very British to have that shit on the books forever. And we've seen that recently. But anyway, that it peaked in the 1400s and 1500s as it lit fire across Europe. And then as the 1500s started wrapping up, started going out of date because there had been a bunch of really high profile trials, especially in Germany, where a lot of this was just mob justice and literally lynch mobs. But it had reached the point where people were actually going to court and people were holding kangaroo courts and killing people, and it was a really bad look for people who had already started to grow tired of it or who never wanted any part of this shit in the first place. And there were always people, even at the height of this craze, verbally and openly pushing back and writing about it, trying to get people to stop doing it. And that put it into decline, but it was still a thing just in time for the Salem witch trials they were right at, I think they're the 1680s, they were right at the end, right after, at that point, they'd been dwindling for a while, but it was still a thing that people did. And that was pretty infamous, and it was something that people made the news of the time, that people were holding, and it was often treated in places that weren't America as public mob justice instead of something that was magical or witchy or something. It was a bad scene. And that all of that's kind of general to the point of being mildly inaccurate, but again, I read this relatively quickly. If I give me 15 minutes and Wikipedia, and I'll dig up more sources and such, but that's the outline of it.
Yeah, this whole section is meant to be run as stealth. There's an achievement for getting through this without being spotted, and it's bullshit, like a lot of the other stealth achievements. Because look at literally everything I have to do, and having to do that stealthily. Yeah, and you can only do the thing once every 8 hours.
Yeah,
that's
not anything that people are gonna. That's not anything anybody cares about. Gods, enforced stealth sections are from a game design perspective, I get that you have to break up your primary gameplay loop so it doesn't get stale, unless your game is one of those games that's small enough that it can have one primary gameplay loop. But people always find just the worst ways to do that. They just the dumbest thing. It's like anime. A lot of older anime, especially shonen, know that if action goes on forever, it just gets boring. And they break it up by cutting to characters standing by and staring and not saying anything important, which is just kind of infuriating.
Yeah, I do get one achievement in this whole section, which is a platforming achievement, oddly enough.
Okay. Sometimes something's happen.
And now we can finally get out of here. I hate this mission, is why I never do it again. Actually, I rarely replay early sections, because when you replay stuff, you want to earn the maximum XP you can, so you really just replay Tokyo a lot.
Oh.
And if you're wondering, this lake looks like a platforming challenge. It is. The water hurts you.
weird how rarely platforming actually works in the game. Like,
You have to base a game around platforming, and an MMO is not suited for platforming.
it's not when you have latency. And these days, given, I think people are starting to back away from this a little bit, but wow, there was a time when every big game really wanted to be on a server so that the whatever company owned it could control who was playing it. God, that was a nightmare, just constantly getting kicked from single player games. But yeah, I wonder, I know like pure platforms are pretty rare these days. I wonder if that's part of it. But
Last platformer I played was Mario Odyssey, and that's a phenomenal game.
yeah, I think I played Mario Galaxy, and that was the last big Mario that I played. Which is also a good
Oh,
game.
you should absolutely see if you can get Mario Odyssey on the Switch. It's phenomenal.
That's probably a little much on the tendons for me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's I like these days. These days it's funny. I think it is getting better slowly, but it's so weather based. It's like some days that
Oh
can go
yeah,
for hours.
and we've been
and we've been having
yeah,
shitty
these
fucking
days.
weather.
Yeah, that sounds horrible.
It's I'm now an honorary old person because the weather really does fuck. Like I can tell when the weather is coming in by how like there are days where I was able to sit down and play Skyrim for 6 hours straight
Bonjour.
and just feel nothing there because the weather was perfectly still. And there are days where I pick up a controller and I put it down after 20 seconds because nope, not today. But there was a time when I could not pick up a controller for very long. But then, I mean, God, I had the worst. I beat Horizon Zero Dawn at the worst of it. I just wore like heavy medical
Oh,
equipment.
Horizon Zero Dawn is so good.
God, it is. Oh, it's a great game. And like it hurt a lot, but not in a way that caused me permanent harm. So whatever. And
Yeah, you're seeing like the next couple of minutes is just me trying to hit tiny platforms.
like
But I managed to get the achievement for doing it in less than 30 seconds. So, because unlike the other achievements, this one resets when you fall off.
that's nice of them.
It's like the one achievement that does.
That,
So they knew. They knew. They were like, yeah, all of our achievements. Yeah, let's have this one reset.
God, I'm cringing just watching, like thinking about doing this myself. That would be a nightmare. Yeah, I underestimate how much I can take sometimes when it comes to video games, because I err on the side of safety. But you never know. I don't know what it is about Skyrim and Bethesda games in general. I think it's because they have Bethesda games are about looting as much as they are about fighting in their own way. So I think there's just always a lot of menu based fucking around, listening to people talk at you for a while. So there's a lot of breaks between, and also there's a lot of running, which is just one motion with your muscles and doesn't actually put much stress on them. So there's a lot of variation in action. And I think that's part of why they tend to be successful in general, because you're always doing something a little bit different. And that's part of why I can use them, even though they are very much real time games. Meanwhile, you get shit like a lot of platforms, and that's only precise, like precision use of muscles, and that's very different. God, everything is like, I am so sad that we are gradually losing the last turn-based JRPGs, because like I know
I was never big
into
into turn-based JRPGs, so for me it's not a great loss. But they'll always be indie titles.
They're all going for these like real-time mixed things that are just hell. I hate it. And the stuff that actually sucks about JRPGs is not getting any better.
Like the stories?
I was trying to avoid saying that, but yeah, and a lot of the gameplay assumptions too. It's just they just tend to be very long, very cliche, and sometimes they when they're successful, and they often are, they feel like they're successful in spite of the tropes that they use instead of because of them, and that is an issue. But then that's kind of the state of Japanese genre fiction today, anyway. So that goes way beyond um, game stories. It's very common in Japanese like novels and writing. It's less common in animation and video. Like I'm like in anime, though it's still an issue. But I think it's weird thinking about like how nobody does filler episodes anymore in anime,
Yes.
and because people just drop whole seasons on Netflix or Crunchyroll or whatever. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. Like I It a lot of filler was stupid, and there's no way around that. But in response, we've ended up with this stuff that feels like it has to keep momentum over 20 episodes or 13 episodes, and there's no time for anybody to breathe or develop anything unless the show goes on for like 20 seasons. And even then, these days, very few shows go on for very long. You don't get like next shit. The TNG took like 3 seasons for Riker, but like wasn't it 3 seasons until Riker grew the beard?
I believe so.
Like, and there is no show in the modern television that would be able to be mediocre long enough to develop like TNG
And
did.
here I get stuck in a tree.
Blow up on. You really are stuck in a tree.
Yeah, I have to teleport out.
Yeah, you glitch into the geometry sometimes. It's a lovely view of rain on landmines. I don't know. I don't even watch that much TV. I don't know what I'm complaining about.
I don't watch any TV.
Like these days, there's like a couple things. There's a couple anime that I'm still following, but is the technical term, because like I'm referring to multiple series. Is animes correct in that instance?
I believe anime is both singular and the plural.
Yeah, but there's also the group. What's it called? Group plural, like peoples. If you're talking about if you're talking about a people, you can also talk about peoples plural, like a set of peoples. So in that case, is there such a thing as a set of animes?
I'm not sure. I've always heard it as both singular and plural.
So, whatever. You'll just use convention. Like there are a couple of anime that I'm still following, on and off. I started watching. I don't know if you keep up with it. I know we've talked about this before, but I'm not remembering off the top of my head. I don't know how much you keep up with anime right now.
The last anime I watched, and pretty much the only one I watched to the finish, was Neon Genesis Evangelion.
Like when it came out, like
Oh god, no! I was
yeah,
way too young for
yeah,
that.
I'm like,
No, like I think it was in 2006. I sat down and I watched the whole thing,
that show.
and that was the last thing I really.
I mean, that's NGE is its own special beast. Like, God, I've heard it. What's the saying? It has this reputation. I don't know if you've heard of it. Like, if you aren't suicidal and watch NGE, if you aren't suicidal and want to be suicidal, watch Neon Genesis Evangelion. If you are suicidal and want to not be suicidal, watch Neon Genesis Evangelion. So I've heard from multiple people that it literally just like something about it just hollowed them out at the lowest point of their lives and let them move on. Because it's like the last part of it is Hideaki Anno's extended psychotic break at like the depth of depression.
I believe during the Egypt episode we talked about the reboot, the final reboot
Yeah,
movie,
but
and we laughed about how the answer to suicide is a big titty Genki
yeah,
girl.
yeah. God, I mean, look, sometimes sometimes I've seen this happen. Like when you get life really does throw that like if you do get over yourself and decide to push yourself back together and build yourself something new, sometimes life really will hand shit to you as long as you're willing to as long as you're willing to put the footwork in to keep it. But like I have seen people wait like hit rock bottom, bounce, and end up a couple years later like dating somebody they love and all that shit. But I think there's a causality link there that I don't think exists in real life. Let's say that.
And here we have to do a magic spell, and I fuck it up.
I look at that and I think like tanning racks in video games.
Yeah, pretty much.
I wonder if these I can't see these close enough to know anything. See if I can recognize anything about their make. Like, I don't know. That's the sort of shit that has. What?
If
Oh.
you get it wrong, he kills you.
Well, there you go. God, speaking of things that kill you, have you heard about the OGL?
I heard something about them tightening the license and everyone being really pissed.
Yeah. So, long story short, you know how the open gaming license for Dungeons and Dragons, it's like basically there's stuff that is out while they hold the copyright to it, as long as people don't claim it's theirs, basic and credit them, they basically give free use.
Mm-hmm.
For everything they're making basically a new edition, and they are also applying this to everything that's ever been made for fifth edition. Everything will now, not retroactively, but from now after this policy goes in place, they will now owe a significant portion of their proceeds to Wizards of the Coast. So like
Oh, that's gonna get challenged in court.
oh it will. The common uh, there's enough leeway in the wording of the original license, and given how they've revised it, that it's not enough to really stand up in court, but it's enough to drag out in court. And they think that that's their strategy. They're going to basically dare the various smaller companies like Paizo to come at them and then drown them in Hasbro money and lawyers, and see if they can't get them to knuckle under with that, which is a very corporate decision, but I'm not sure how wise it is.
Yeah, because that screams class action lawsuit.
Yep. And those are bad. Bad publicity, and they take forever. And even though like nobody ever gets anything in a class action lawsuit unless it's a very, very focused class action lawsuit, like that, those are still pretty expensive. But nobody the information about this was leaked, and no one knows how final it was. For all we know, this is somebody's idea of like a negotiating point partway through revising the process, and this is just something that they're throwing up for contrast or to revise later. But it might also be something they're actually going to present in front of the board of directors. We just don't know. And got leaked very shortly before a big war release, so it may be what they were going to present. That's gonna if what we see goes into practice, it's going to effectively kill the OGL for 5th edition, and that's a very bad idea. I'm celebrating because even though it's going to ruin careers, kill jobs, it means people will start looking for other games than Dungeons and Dragons to run their cyberpunk adventures and do whatever the fuck they want, instead of just trying to shoehorn into Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition again.
GURPS time to shine.
Yeah, well, I mean, GURPS, like, as much as I love GURPS, I don't think GURPS is that welcoming to newcomers. But like, Powered by the Apocalypse, its time in the sun has already passed. This might be able to revive it, if we're very lucky, possibly lucky.
You'd think a lovely old lady like me would have no enemies.
Gukabea, best.
Well, when you've been around for as long as I have, you're bound to make some. Most are long dead. Some, unfortunately, are as long-lived as I am. Say hoot! Why is this little wheel pointing to food? I can't ever seem to make things sharp. Those third-age hollow images were so much easier to use. The Vampire Queen sees me as either a threat or an annoyance, I'm not sure which, but she wants to get rid of me. I thought I'd be extra annoying and send her a photograph. Oh well, I can always make a swift getaway. But I'm needed here. I'm protecting more than my tree against Lilith's children. If I flee, it won't be long before they all fall, and that'll cause trouble everywhere. They're making your life easier, though, gathering in one place like that. Just the sort of thing we need for a preemptive strike. And I'll see if I can't dig up some other device to capture your moment of glory.
So yeah, this is a straightforward go murder shit thing.
This is one of those things where the surrounding, the circumstances around the mission are more interesting than the mission. She is a, isn't she a third age survivor? Straight up.
I think so. She's sort of kind of King Solomon-y. She's sort of kind of become a mythological figure. A godling, if you will. Yeah. She is a minor goddess.
You like it?
I believe.
And I have probably talked until you probably are well aware of of how the line between gods and spirit is not very solid in most polytheistic cultures, sort of. At least not in the
we had that conversation. We had that conversation in Egypt.
I think we've had it like multiple times. But yeah. And it's weird because and I love how she struggles with modern technology because it's so primitive compared to her, rather than because she looks old, so you think, oh, it's new. No, it's the opposite. Our technology is, as far as she's concerned, it's that we should have moved past thousands of years ago. Wow. One day, I hope this won't happen. I hope before they close the game down, they release some final dungeon just to cap it all off, and they show like third age shit, and it will be really disappointing. But at least they'll do it. Or at least they would do it. That's at this point, what the third age was like is way more interesting to me than a lot of the story that they have. And the story they have is good, but a lot of it is just sort of retread mythology and folk tales, and people do that a lot. I don't know if you agree, or if that's just me.
For me, I'd just like to see a conclusion to the story, an end to the storyline.
And that's never going to happen, or at least not in a satisfying fashion.
Well, even if it's unsatisfying, that is still satisfying in a way.
I mean, I guess
because it's an MMO, it will never have a conclusion. But if they really shut it down, I want, at the very least, one of the writers to come out and say, this is where we were going. Because for now, all we know is we're chasing the Morning Light to the Congo. That is the last thing we know. The Congo expansion has never come out, so that's it. That's all we know.
I mean, you say that, but we both saw Game of Thrones, and earlier than that, Lost. It is entirely possible to end something so badly you spite everything that came before it.
Yes, but I have more faith in these authors than the guys who ran Game of Thrones.
I mean, I don't. But, like, I think they're better, but, you know, like, I honestly don't know what they're building up to. I mean, you've seen more of the game. They maybe like Lost suffered from not actually having an answer and people making a shitty one. And Game of Thrones suffered from being people trying to throw in every twist they could think of, and then they had to make up an answer at the end. I don't know how much of a thing that is here. How, like, whether they have an actual end in mind or whether it's an MMO and they were planning to string it out forever and they have to just make something up unsatisfying because there's no way on Earth they could actually tie up every end.
Well, I think the best end to it that could be is, you know, the Congo. Well, the Congo stuff will never come out. They're not getting enough funding to make new stuff. The best thing that could happen would be a really sweet tie-in novel that basically says, yeah, you went to the Congo and it broke. Just the end came. And then most of it would be just the world waking up.
So, like, basically, Filth wins.
No, not the Felth wins.
Or Gaia wins.
Gaia wakes up, yes. Gaia, in a last ditch, just basically goes, fuck it.
And yeah.
I was preventing your apotheosis this whole time to save you from something from the filth. Fuck it. I have no option other than to mass awaken literally every human being.
Yeah. That's actually that is actually an interesting idea. I can imagine that sounds like something that would make a good tie-in novel. And you'd have
that's the ending that happens every time, and you have to roll back. But this time the machines are broken, so you just have to live with this sort of half-destroyed Earth where everyone has superpowers now and can't die.
Yeah, and you just end the novel like that. And that's how you spawn enough fan fiction to hopefully get a renewal for another MMO down the line one day.
Not even an MMO, just a video game.
I mean, well, yeah, I don't know. I don't trust Famicom not to do this as another MMO. So, you know, They
already rebooted this thing once.
Yeah.
Like they're not making another MMO.
Yeah.
If they were smart, once they close this down and make that tie-in novel, they will license out the IP to someone who will make a pretty decent video game.
Some
like I'm not expecting I'm not expecting a AAA video game out of this
definitely.
IP.
And this IP would suffer from AAA. There's no way AAA would grind out everything interesting about it. Even under ideal circumstances, they should not get their hands on it. But like, because you know all the weird shit and the subtle shit and the stuff that's like running around.
You know who I think would be great to make a game about this?
What?
Hideo Kojima.
I don't think he'd handle the female characters in this game very well. I think that, for one, I don't think he would have an interesting
I mean, he's the OG conspiracy theory guy.
Like, I think the thing about the Secret World is that there's ultimately, like, you know, there's a lot of emphasis, for all the emphasis on big people, big shit that's happening, there's a lot of emphasis on little people getting caught up in it. And what I think Hideo Kojima does big people getting caught up in things way better than little people getting caught up in things.
That's fair. I mean, I don't really know any other auteur gamer game makers.
I don't know. I think something
Who-
like Obsidian. I think, honestly, letting Obsidian loose on this license may pay off.
Yeah, I could see Obsidian.
It would feel different from the
Uh,
MMO, but it could use the license in a good way.
oh yes, absolutely. I want to say BioWare pre Mass Effect 3 could probably do
Yeah,
it.
definitely pre-Mass. Like, I mean, these days I don't know what are they still around? Are they still doing things?
They have a new Mass Effect coming
They
out
do?
eventually,
Oh,
and they're bringing out a new Dragon Age.
I guess those are their flagship franchises. I don't know what else they could do at this point. Like, but yeah,
They've burned through a lot of goodwill.
yeah, and they're an EA subsidiary with all the horror that comes with it. You don't you don't sell your company to EA unless you're willing to just go fuck it. It's time to retire, or you're stupid.
Do you watch the YouTuber Civi11?
Nope.
Okay, well he reviews older games, and he often talks about how, yeah, this studio was great, and then they got bought by EA. But he once did a joke where he said to EA something is to ritually sacrifice it in order to ensure the selling of the next FIFA year.
Yeah. God.
He actually edited a scene from The Thing to be about EA taking over studios.
The Thing is.
I really highly recommend CV11. He's very funny, and there's sort of a weird meta story going on with his reviews.
I do miss old BioWare. I tried to play I think we're actually out of time. No, I was wrong. We have a little time. Like, I tried to play the original Mass Effect 1 and 2, but they don't have modern controller support on the PC ports, so I wasn't able to actually get it. And that, I mean, they're like, there are mods out there, but they don't work. They only work for old controllers that are no longer things that you can find. That sucks. Because I love Mass Effect 1, even though people make fun of it. I like the Mako. I always have.
The Mako was very fun to drive, even if it didn't control very well. And the meme about Shepard's driving will live forever. Like the meme about his dancing.
Social awkwardness. I should go. Just leave. Those games.
They make fun of Mass Effect Andromeda for the characters having autism, but no, Shepard from Mass Effect 1 totally has autism. I should go.
Yeah, just end conversation. Goodbye. 3 was also underrated, but Mass Effect 3 is another game that ended so badly it spited itself. And people forget that it was actually a very good game because the ending was so unsatisfying.
Pick one of three options. What do the options mean? We're not telling you.
Hey, you don't know. Which flavor of ice cream would you like today?
And then the worst part, before we leave, the worst part, the DLC that had the fourth ending where you refuse and it's just everyone dies.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is me checking for Krampus again to see if I can do that Krampus mission. But I'll see if I can find him next time. Thank you for watching.
And see you later.